What if your last name holds a secret about your ancestors? What if it could tell you that they were the son of a man named Paolo, or their original name was much longer, like Ugobaldo? Many Tuscan surnames hide a fascinating history, and today we're going to decode the clues that can reveal your family's past in the heart of Italy. Your name is more than just a word. It's a story waiting to be told. From blacksmiths and barbers to the red-haired and the left-handed, these names paint a vivid picture of life in medieval and Renaissance Tuscany. Get ready to travel back in time as we unravel the secrets hidden in the iconic surnames of this legendary Italian region. Before we get into the specifics of Tuscan names, let's ask a basic question. Where did Italian surnames even come from? For a long time, most people in Europe were just known by one name: Marco, Giovanni, and Isabella. In a small village, that worked just fine. But as towns grew into cities and trade exploded, it got a lot harder to tell one Giovanni from another. You needed a way to distinguish Giovanni the blacksmith from Giovanni the son of Paolo. This is where hereditary names came in. While the nobility had used surnames for centuries to signify their land or lineage, the practice started to be spread to common people between the 10th and 14th centuries. The process, however, was gradual. A major step in formalizing it came from the Council of Trent in the mid-16th century. The council mandated that every parish had to keep detailed records of baptisms and marriages, complete with a first and last name for every person. This church-led record-keeping was a key reason why hereditary surnames became permanent across Italy and the rest of Catholic Europe. As the birthplace of the Renaissance and the cradle of the Italian language, Tuscany was at the center of this evolution. The dialect spoken in Florence became the foundation for modern Italian, thanks to writers like Dante Alighieri. So, it's no surprise that Tuscan surnames give us some of the clearest and most interesting examples of how Italian names were born. They generally fall into a few categories, with each one telling a different kind of story. The most common way to form a surname in Tuscany was simply to state who your father was. This is called a patronymic surname. You've probably heard of names like Johnson, which means son of John. Tuscans did the same thing, just with their own linguistic style. You'll notice that a huge number of Tuscan names end with the letter I. Think of Paoli, Pieri, or Salvadori. That I isn't random. It's a direct link to Latin. It could either mean of, or it came to signify the family of, or the descendants of. So, the surname Paoli doesn't just mean Paul. It really means of Paolo, or the family of Paolo. In the same way, Pieri comes from the family of Piero, and Martini comes from the family of Martino. This pattern is a classic feature of naming in Tuscany and central Italy. It's a beautifully simple way to create a family identity. Take the name Giannini, for example. It comes from the super popular name Giovanni and signifies that the original family was the clan of a man named Giovanni. If your surname ends in that classic I, there's a good chance that you're carrying the name of a distant male ancestor, a linguistic echo of son of, that has been passed down for centuries. While patronymics are common everywhere in Italy, Tuscans have a unique linguistic quirk that makes their surnames stand out. They love to shorten things. Unlike the longer, more complex surnames you might find in other regions, Tuscan names are often short and sweet, usually with just 2 syllables. This comes from a regional habit of chopping down longer, more formal given names. It was basically like a nickname that stuck and became the official family name. For instance, the surname Baldi is a shortened version of the old Germanic name Ugobaldo. Berti can come from Alberto or Roberto. The common surname Betti is a clipping of Benedetto, which means blessed. This shows how these names came from everyday speech. People didn't use the full formal name in conversation, so the surname that developed reflected that casual shortened form. The list of examples go on and on. Gori is a short form of Gregorio. Landi comes from Orlando. Pucci, a classic Florentine name, is a shortened version of Filippo. And Cioni can be a shorter version of a name like Baldaccione or Ugocione. Even the extremely common name Giovanni was shortened in different ways to create a whole bunch of surnames. You can see it in Vanni, Vanini, and Vanucci, all popular Tuscan names that trace back to Giovanni. This habit of shortening names is a distinct feature of the Tuscan dialect, making its surnames some of the most compact in all of Italy. It's pretty amazing how much a name can tell you about history, isn't it? Is your own last name starting to make a little more sense? We'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below with your surname and what you know about its origin. And if you're enjoying this trip into Tuscan history, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. What if your name doesn't come from an ancestor's first name? It might have come from their job. In a world where your profession was a huge part of your identity, it was a natural way to tell people apart. Think about a village with 3 guys named Marco. You'd call them Marco the blacksmith, Marco the miller, and Marco the tailor. Over time, those descriptions became permanent surnames. Tuscany, with its bustling medieval cities and artisan guilds, is full of these occupational surnames. One of the most famous examples is Ferrari. It comes from the Latin word ferrum, which means iron, and it identifies an ancestor who was a blacksmith or an iron worker. Along the same lines, you have Fabri, which also means blacksmith. The name Martelli literally means hammers, and it likely referred to someone who made or used them, like a smith or a carpenter. The list goes on and on. It sounds like a directory of medieval professions. The surname Barbieri belonged to barbers. Mugnai or Mugnai were the millers, who were essential to any town. Sarti were tailors, and the more uniquely Tuscan one, Ciampi, likely referred to bell ringers. These names are a direct window into the economy of medieval Tuscany, reminding us that for our ancestors, what they did for a living became who they were and in turn a part of who we are today. But not all names are about family or jobs. Sometimes a surname wasn't about who your father was or what you did, but simply about you. Surnames that came from nicknames, often based on a physical trait or personality, are incredibly common and give us some of the most personal glimpses into the lives of our ancestors. The single most common surname in all of Italy is a perfect example, Rossi. It literally means reds, and was a nickname for someone with red hair or reddish complexion. In the same way, Bianchi means whites, and would have described a person with very light hair or a pale complexion. Neri means blacks, for someone with dark hair or dark complexion, while Biondi means blondes. These descriptive names could point to other things too. The surname Mancini, which means left-handed. Grassi means fat, which, in a time of widespread scarcity, was probably seen as a sign of wealth and good health. Some names might even hint at someone's character. Giusti, for instance, means just or fair, suggesting an ancestor who was known for their integrity. These names are a great reminder that the people who first had them were real individuals with unique features that made them stand out. Another logical way to identify someone was by where they came from. As people moved between towns and regions for work, trade, or marriage, a name showing their origin was a simple and effective label. These are known as toponymic surnames. Maybe the most famous example in the world is a Tuscan one, Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci's name literally means Leonardo from Vinci, the small town near Florence where his family was from. The name Pratesi is another classic meaning from Prato, another major city in Tuscany. Sometimes the name pointed to a larger region like Lombardy, which marks someone who had moved to Tuscany from the northern region of Lombardy. Surnames could also come from general landmarks instead of specific towns. Monte means mountains, likely for a family that lived in a hilly area. Costa means coast or slope, pointing to someone who lived near the sea or on a hillside. These names trace the movements of our ancestors, showing us that migration has always been part of the human story. They connect a family's identity not just to a person or a job, but to a real place on the map. But not every name has a happy origin. Some reveal a much more difficult past, especially those given to abandoned children or foundlings. In an era of extreme poverty, it was tragically common for parents to be unable to care for a newborn. These babies were often left at churches or orphanages, which were known as foundling hospitals. These institutions had to give the children a name, and the surnames that they chose were often a direct reference to the child's situation. The most common foundling surname in Tuscany is Innocenti, which means the innocents. The name comes directly from Florence's famous Ospedale degli Innocenti, or Hospital of the Innocents, the Renaissance-era orphanage where so many abandoned children were raised. Someone with the surname Innocenti very likely has an ancestor who's passed through the doors of that institution. Another common foundling surname is Esposito, from the Latin word exposed or placed outside. While it's less common in Tuscany than Innocenti, it tells the same heartbreaking story of a child left to be found. Other more poetic names were also used, like Trovato, which means found. These surnames are a powerful link to the social history of the region, representing the stories of survival of those who started their lives in the toughest circumstances imaginable. From Paoli to Ferrari, and from Rossi to Innocenti, Tuscan surnames are much more than just labels. They're miniature history lessons, carrying the echoes of ancient Latin, the habits of a region, the daily work of artisans, and even the physical appearance of our ancestors. They tell the stories of family, migration, community, and survival. We've seen how the names came from fathers like Martini and Pieri. We've decoded the Tuscan love for shortening names, which turned Ugobaldo into Baldi. We've pictured the blacksmiths and tailors behind names like Ferrari and Sarti. And we've uncovered the personal stories and nicknames and the poignant history of foundling names. Your surname is a doorway to the past, a direct connection to the heart of Italy and the generations who came before you. The story of their lives is written right there in your name. So the next time you introduce yourself, remember the secret history your name holds and the long line of Tuscans whose story you are continuing to tell. Thank you for joining us on this dive into the origins of Tuscan names. If you found this journey as fascinating as we did, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories about history and culture. We'd love to have you with us. Thanks for watching.